and welcome. My name is Sharon Roundell, and today I'm going to try and flail around and keep you educated while entertained for a whole 20 minutes. Let's begin, shall we?
So I'm just going to pull the band-aid off right away. The chances of you starting out as a major influence on radio culture are sadly slim to none. And while I may not be directly on camera, I can assure you that I too am crying. But why is this? Well, there are a multitude of reasons why. Unfortunately, as talented as we all are, we aren't the superstars of radio just yet. We're young, a little dumb, need to learn a few things. We cannot all start out on top unless you want to be humiliated in some aspects. Go right ahead, that's par for the course for us, at least in the entertainment industry. For Canada, I think we can all agree that Toronto is a peak and you can't go higher than that unless you count Montreal and Vancouver in the mix. These are all massive cities with large mixtures of cultures, music, entertainment, and more. Throughout the years, however, radio has stayed stable across these cities and Canada in general. Today, I'm going to give you tips and tricks as to how to go about finding a job and successfully relocating to your new career path. So you just got your radio broadcasting diploma and you have nowhere to go with it. At least, that's what you think. You see, there are thousands of job opportunities out there and you don't know about them. How come? Where are they? Well, what if I told you they're right under your nose? Not literally, however, they are close. Check out the rest of Canada. I think it's fairly evident that while the dream is definitely Toronto, a majority of us will begin our broadcasting careers elsewhere in order to gain experience. But that doesn't mean you can't be happy though. Quite the opposite actually. There are so many benefits to stepping out of that comfort zone and exploring the rest of Canada. In this presentation, we're going to explore some regions of Canada, at least the largest for our job market. So here we have several dishes. Now I myself am a fish fellow, but I am positive there is at least something here you might enjoy. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to cover every province, but want to give you some idea of what to look for. So right here we have our options. You can choose from some donuts from Saskatchewan, some fish and chips from Nova Scotia, and this weird French onion soup from British Columbia. You may be confused by this food metaphor thing that I'm trying to go for here, and that's okay, I'm confused as well. At least for a person like me, food is a big reason to move to a place. That's why Toronto was so originally appealing to me, because I came from a good old southern Ontario town. So keep an eye out for the food and culture of a place you're going to. Trust me, it's key to keep you happy in an unfamiliar setting. Now, attached to those foods is a price. This represents how expensive it is to live in each province. So depending on where you want to go, you'll have to factor in the wage of your potential new job, what your current finances are, and if your new employer will help out with getting you to your new location. As you can see, Saskatchewan is surprisingly the cheapest place to live out of all three delicious options here. So let's start there. Saskatchewan is a very quiet province, but has a bustling radio community. With over 31 stations across the wheat fields, it's a very feasible market to work in. You just have to know how to network yourself, which I will touch on later down the line. In terms of major cities, Saskatchewan has a fair bit. I would say they're most akin to London, Ontario, at least by size. Some of the major stations include 620 The Source, News Talk 980, among others. Something to note about the province is that it has a distinct radio sound, which can also be attributed to the influence of a large abundance of First Nations culture there. Each station I listen to tries to incorporate some elements that would appeal to the vast array of cultures there, which, to be fair, I don't think we see enough of in Ontario. Now, unfortunately, I will have to list a few drawbacks. This includes scenery and weather. The prairies are not for everybody, certainly not for me. I couldn't survive in the summer heat there. However, if you do have a knack for brutal heat and flatlands and surprisingly brutal winters, then by all means, Saskatchewan may just be the place for you. Bonus is that it's cheap, with one-bedroom apartments averaging for $900 to $1,100 a month. The second province on our Tour de Canada is Nova Scotia, aka the second least expensive one. There's something special about radio on the East Coast. Can you guess why? I'll give you a hint. It rhymes with oats. That's right, boats. Unsurprisingly, radio has been very popular amongst fishermen, at least those close to the coast. I mean, picture this. You're in a boat with your buddies or coworkers, the great sea splashing on the deck and mist hitting your face as you hear, "Today on CBC News." Trust me, it's even more satisfying than it sounds. Regardless of all that, however, it's perfect background and foreground noise when there really is not much entertainment aboard a small fishing boat. Nova Scotia is also commonly known as a fishing haven. Obviously, being closest to the ocean has its benefits, but when it comes to this, reports from 2015 claim that right now, Nova Scotia is providing the largest amount of fish produce seen this century in the world. That's nuts, considering all the competition out there, so a round of applause for our great fishers out there. Anyway, what is Nova Scotia's radio market like? Well, I can tell you it's larger than Saskatchewan's. The median demographic in Nova Scotia is 45-year-old males, so it's creeping up there in age, but since the cost of living there averages $900 to $1,300 per one-bedroom apartments, we're actually seeing a large amount of youth move out there as well. Bottom line for Nova Scotia is, it's potentially going to explode as a job market, so keep that in mind as we go through the presentation. Last but not least, let's talk about the rich province of British Columbia. It's expensive to live there, but is it worth it? Who's to say? But I say it's worth it. Arguably, BC is the most beautiful province in Canada, certainly the most Canadian. There are multiple large cities in British Columbia, as well as big mountains. Can you imagine taking a portable radio on a hike in the freezing Alps of BC?
The best music all day long.
The radio landscape of BC is vast, certainly having cities such as Victoria and Vancouver help it as well. So what are audience looking for in British Columbia? Well, listening into the stations, it seems to provide an absolutely chaotic experience. It's very high energy and brash. The people of British Columbia are absolutely wild. Obviously, there are slower, more mid-tempo stations as well. However, I found they are far and few in between. BC features large and vast mountainscapes, which bode very well for if you're posting on your Instagrams or your MySpaces, and the median age is 41. Housing there is the largest problem if you want to relocate, however, as the average one-bedroom apartment runs from $1,100 to $2,000 a month. Now that you have an understanding of a few of the locations across Canada, keep in mind there are also territories I could touch on. It's time to look into how to go about relocating and finding a job. In this portion of the presentation, we are going to discuss how to find a job and relocating. Firstly, I want to talk to you about finding the job. Now, I know you've heard this before from our professors probably dozens of times, but networking is incredibly important and key. It's how we all found the interviews even for these presentations. And it's actually a way to climb yourself into an industry that, from the outside, seems to have a relatively closed door. So how do you make sure you stick in people's heads? Well, you've got to bug them every couple of weeks. Keep checking up on them. Ask them questions. Just be that little fly in a coffee shop or something. Why do this? Well, when a position does open, or perhaps they already have a position open, you can potentially be one of the first people they contact. Wouldn't that be sweet? It sounds pretty epic to me. Now keep in mind, don't shy away from applying to places from sites like Indeed or Milkman. Those are key in networking as well. However, when you find a position and from there, perhaps an interview, what do you need to know when looking for the right place? When applying for apartments or perhaps even a new house, you're going to come across some pretty needy and petty landlords. But that goes without saying. Transitioning from college straight into the job market is a little bit of a challenge, especially that first day experience of moving to completely unfamiliar territory from what you're used to in the comforting city of Toronto. So the main question on your mind right now, or perhaps you're in a coffee shop in the corner with a MacBook while the Black Eyed Peas are blasting in the background screaming, "How did Jaron find all these useful tips out?" Well, I'll tell you, you're in for quite the doozy. I had the opportunity to speak with Aaron McNutt of Rolco Radio in Saskatchewan. Try saying that 5 times fast. Like us, Aaron is a graduate of the Radio Humber program and has been able to maneuver across Canada, situated in 2 different cities since her time at Humber. You're going to hear from her through various times in this presentation, as I feel she went through the quintessential moving experience. She speaks about her experience moving from Humber and finding that job.
Right at the end, toward the end of my program, I guess about a month before we were officially done, I was asked to help out with training the certificate program. So I kind of transitioned from being a student to working at Humber for a really short time. But right before then, like kind of that last few months, I was applying to almost anywhere. I knew that maybe Toronto wasn't an attainable goal because I wanted to be on air. So I figured somewhere in Ontario, we'll see where we go. My partner was going to Lakehead University in Thunder Bay pretty soon after. So I was like, well, that could be an okay market. So I applied to basically every station there, bothered every program director there, and eventually got hired for a company with a station in Thunder Bay, but not in Thunder Bay. It was in Dryden, Ontario, which is about 4 hours west of Thunder Bay and about 4 hours east of Winnipeg. So that was a learning experience, definitely a humbling experience, because you go from a place where not having a car is not really a problem to not having a car means you're abandoned in the forest. Through that, was there for about 2-ish years, went to Thunder Bay with a different company, and then my partner's turn to pick where we lived, because I jumped twice. So he got an opportunity here in Saskatchewan. And so I started the process of being pleasantly persistent for basically every program director in the city, and eventually bothered my way into a job at Ralco Radio.
With the majority of us being from the GTA, it is likely we're going to experience the same thing that Aaron did, and that is people who want absolutely nothing to do with us. Unfortunately, some people from Toronto have tainted our good reputation as needy good-for-nothings who feel privileged to everything. And before you go into the rest of the world, I just kind of want to give this is probably the most key thing from this little presentation. You're not owed a thing by other towns. Certainly Sarnia hasn't given me anything, and I haven't felt the same way about Toronto. So keep your head up as the rest of the world tries to beat it down.
I would say definitely my first job was the time it was hardest, mainly because I was so used to like functioning in a GTA way, like where it's like there's a million apartments, all you have to do is be there and have cash, and they're more than willing to take you, preferably a job. They like that too. But like, in Dryden, there's a couple thousand people in that specific like city. So it becomes an issue of they don't know who you are. You're leaving them a 416 phone number to call you back. They don't want you. Like, it's very kind of, I found like the small town thing was a little bit difficult, because I ended up, the station that moved me out there put me up in a hotel for a week, but then it was sort of like, hey, you're on your own. So that was an interesting experience. And also like, I felt very pressured to not be that person who came from Southern Ontario and can't figure it out. Like we already have a bit of a reputation as people from Southern Ontario of being like these high maintenance weirdos. And I really didn't want to be that person, because most of us aren't that person. And I ended up living with a coworker for a little bit, which was amazing. And I'm so glad that they took me in, because they're like my adoptive family now. Like, we still talk all the time, but it literally took me like 4 months to find an apartment that would just call me back. The other part too is after a couple months, people knew who I was a little bit more, because it's a small town. You're on the radio every day bothering them. Like, they know you have a little bit more name recognition. So that kind of helped. When I moved to Thunder Bay, I was lucky because my partner already lived there. So he had an apartment already. When we moved to Saskatchewan, that was a little more panicked, because we had to basically just take whatever somebody would give to us online without meeting us in person. So, yeah, I mean, we ended up, the place was fine, like, I think ultimately, like, your expectations have to kind of align with what you're doing. Like, we didn't expect to get, our quote unquote forever home on Kijiji. Yeah, that just wasn't really necessarily what we thought we were doing, but it gets you in the ground.
So what you just heard from Aaron there basically reiterates all of my points. That first attempt is going to be a little rough. Of course, having connections out in the region is also key. Also, for the love of all that is holy, you're going to want to keep your expectations relatively, if not all the way low, when looking at and even renting out a location. Not all places are going to end up looking like El Dorado or whatever on Kijiji.
Because we had to basically just take whatever somebody would give to us online without meeting us in person. So, yeah, I mean, we ended up, the place was fine, like, I think ultimately, like, your expectations have to kind of align with what you're doing. Like, we didn't expect to get, our quote unquote forever home on Kijiji. Yeah, that just wasn't really necessarily what we thought we were doing, but it gets you in the ground. You find your little neighborhoods that you like, and I mean, you can always move again. It's not the most fun experience, but you find your place.
That all sounds super, super stressful, which we're going to talk about how to manage all that. However, I'm popping on here on the camera to talk to you about another interview I did. I just failed to record the session because I'm a professional, you see. Anyway, I had the pleasure of speaking with Amy Hanna, announcer for 97.3 The Wave in New Brunswick. There's a theme with this presentation. It's networking, and that's exactly what she did. Even during school, she searched for job opportunities and internships around Ottawa during her first semester, even to build up her resume. By the time she graduated from her program, she decided it was time to venture outside of the comfort zone. And she made her way to New Brunswick after making an initial connection with the station manager in Fredericton. From there, she has made her way through the province, working at several different stations. And after a few more years of building up her portfolio, she plans to return to Ontario. Now, obviously, both people I managed to interview have had their struggles, mainly due to family. While I don't want to date this presentation, we're going through something that kind of prevents a lot of travel and directly seeing our families.
I'm not going to act like some mental health aficionado or anything. While I can assure you I have done my research, some things just have to fall to the experts. However, I can give a little advice as to how to manage that moving stress. Beginning this section is a cursed concept of finances. Now, going out of college is stressful because if you're anything like me, you probably have loans to repay. And how do you manage to get rid of that demon? Get them as good as gone as soon as you can. Do this by either working several jobs or however you can, because people end up rather screwed by the interest piling up. From there, allocate a savings budget during your full-time job search. Make sure you have enough for the initial trip, and your station may potentially help you out. You may have noticed that Erin said that her workplace was able to place her in a hotel for about a week as she worked things out. And this is something a ton of workplaces can actually manage if requested. Finances are the most stressful part of moving to a new place, especially coming out of school. A few other tips include limiting credit card transactions, the aforementioned budget plan, and much more. So we're nearing the end of our little journey out here together, and I just wanted to share my sentiments with all the people that talked to me and everything. That was super appreciated. But something directly to you. Good luck out there. It's certainly a tough landscape to maneuver in, but if you kind of follow all these kind of tips I gave, not that I'm necessarily a genius at this, but I did study, that you could see in my bibliography. But one thing to keep in mind is you have to be positive, and that's something I've always struggled with. Obviously, I'm not like, look at the hairline, but we just got to keep pushing on. You got to find a way into the industry. Just keep networking yourself, and you're going to do great things one day. Thank you for everything.